listening to Not Crazy, a Psych Central podcast, hosted by my ex-husband who has bipolar disorder. Together, we created the mental health podcast for people who hate mental health podcasts.
Hey everybody, and welcome to this week's episode of the Not Crazy podcast. I'm your host, Gabe Howard, and with me as always is Lisa Kiner. Lisa!
Hey everyone, today's quote is "Parting is such sweet sorrow," and that's from Shakespeare's Romeo and Juliet.
And unfortunately, that gets us to the big reveal of today's episode. This is the final Not Crazy podcast.
Aww. Sadness.
You know, when I called my mom and I said, hey, the Not Crazy podcast is going away, my mom said, well, but you'll get a new co-host, right?
Oh, harsh, Susan, harsh.
Well, but she just assumed that any podcast of mine that gets canceled just comes back with a new co-host. She doesn't understand that sometimes podcasts just go away entirely, not...
It kind of shows a faith in you.
Aww.
Yeah, it's actually kind of supportive.
Kind of supportive?
It's actually quite supportive.
I think what's interesting is that I've been through as many co-hosts as I've been through wives. And
here we thought you'd landed on the right one.
Right. And you were my last divorce, and now you're my last co-host. So there's Rachel. Rachel is still, but I'm Rachel's co-host. So no.
Right, that doesn't really count.
It actually tracks. For those of you who don't know, I am the co-host of Inside Schizophrenia, which is also a Psych Central podcast. You can check that out at psychcentral.com/is, just in case you still want to hear my voice in some capacity.
Gabe will also continue to be the host of the Psych Central podcast, which you can check out at psychcentral.com/show.
That is very true. Now, Lisa, I don't like final episodes. I always kind of think that they're dumb. I don't really have anything to say. When I laid this episode out, it was like, hey, this is it. We're done. Peace.
I feel like we should explain why the podcast is ending.
This is going to be good. Why is the podcast ending? Are you going to tell our 5 listeners that there wasn't enough of them? I mean,
hey.
That just seems so mean.
Hey, my mom and some guy I went to high school with are definite listeners, okay? So I want to make sure that they both have all of the information.
You know, there's so many reasons that podcasts get canceled. And of course, PsychCentral.com was recently acquired by Healthline.com. And we're doing some really, really exciting things with podcasting. You know, the Psych Central podcast will continue. Inside Schizophrenia will continue. And more health podcasts are on the horizon. I'm super excited. It's an incredible honor. But then we have to look at, what do we have, right? We have to look at, unfortunately, a niche podcast, a patient-centered podcast. It's popular for a patient-centered podcast, but...
See, well, that's why I feel like we need to explain, because I don't want people to think that the podcast wasn't doing well or that we weren't popular. We were actually really popular. In our niche category, we were actually doing quite well. Some might argue the best.
We just weren't doing as well as the 2 podcasts that didn't get canceled.
But that's an unfair comparison. You're putting us in the wrong category. We can't compete with either of those podcasts. We were never going to be able to compete with either of those.
I think what's interesting for me, and you're going to call this meta, is the only person I couldn't beat was myself.
Whoa.
Because the other podcasts are way more popular, but this one is less popular, but I'm the host of the other. You see what I mean?
Wow, you used meta correctly. See, this was not a complete waste, Gabe. You used the word meta correctly.
Now, Lisa, this was your first podcast, which means this is your first cancellation.
Well, do you think it'll be my last cancellation?
I don't know. Are you going to run again in 2024?
You see, exactly. You're not sure where to go with that question, right?
I think what's interesting is that when I explained to you that this podcast was getting canceled at the end of the year and that we were going to have to go down, you didn't ask to count the listeners. There weren't like a whole bunch of lawsuits. I felt that you conceded and understood relatively quickly. Do you think that's because you have good mental health and are therefore not crazy?
Oh, and he brought it around for yet another meta joke. I am so proud of you.
This one was fun to do. I got to do it with my friends.
I know.
I mean, I literally got to do it with my friends, Gabriel, Nathan, Rachel Starr. It was so great to hear people living with mental illness talking about things that were important to them. As Lisa and I have said all along, we stayed away from the triumphant stories of success and moved towards this is the way I see things probably because I live with, some mental illness. And we thought that was a fascinating take, but all good things.
Thank you, Psych Central, and to Dr. John for giving us this opportunity. But of course, one of the reasons that I became the co-host of this podcast was COVID. There you were going along with the amazing Jackie Zimmerman, and COVID came. And
hit hard.
Yeah, hit hard. And Jackie was no longer able to continue with the podcast. You weren't ready to stop yet. You wanted to continue. So here I am.
It's not exactly how it happened, but sure.
Okay. Well, how do you think it happened?
I was ready to call it a day, and then you were like, I'd probably be willing. And I was shocked by that because this is the first time of you in front of the microphone after a decade. I don't think people really realize that you have been around for just as long as I have. Literally, the very first mental health advocacy thing I did, Lisa was standing next to me. And nobody really knew your name until this show popped up. And
I know. I've been editing the podcast for years, all the podcasts for years.
And you're going to continue editing, directing, and production.
Yes, I will continue to be behind the scenes on both of the other podcasts. And hopefully the more podcasts that Healthline has coming.
Oh my God.
What?
Is it meta that Healthline doesn't want you in front of the microphone, but still wants you behind the microphone?
And here I was so proud of you for using it correctly. No, that's not what that means. No, you're losing me again. So the point is, Jackie had to bow out due to COVID, and here I came on. And of course, no one expected it to last this long. We thought it would be a couple of weeks and then it would be over like everybody else in the world. And here it is all these months later. So our original plan does not work in the continuing pandemic crisis.
It is fair. There's a lot to consider when putting on a podcast at this level. So many people think that, hey, Lisa and I just talk to each other and that's it. Every episode represents probably 10 to 15 hours of work and then another 5 hours of crying in the bathroom saying, I hate this woman. Why am I working with her? But that's like 20 hours a week, right? To do this show. I don't know how many hours you spend crying in the bathroom thinking, why am I working with this asshole? But it's a lot. Plus the therapy.
The bills are extreme.
Offered by BetterHelp.com.
Affordable, convenient, private online counseling.
You can get 1 week of free, convenient, affordable, private online counseling anytime, anywhere, simply by visiting BetterHelp.com/Psych Central.
Every time you say that, I start saying it along, and it just makes me so happy.
They're incredible. That's BetterHelp, not Better Health.
See, people think that it's better health. It's not. It's help with a P. H-E-L-P.
It is help with a P. H-E-L-P. And they have been super supportive of us over the years.
Exactly. We should say thank you to them. They are our primary sponsor for this podcast. Although we've had other sponsors, they have been the mainstay for all these months. So thank you, BetterHelp. On the plus side, we are both going to have so much more time because this is really time consuming. But on the negative side, we won't have the fun.
Fun?
Fun.
This was fun?
Well,
you are wrong. It's super important for me, Lisa, to explain that we don't disagree with Healthline's decision.
Oh, not at all.
It's understandable. Psych Central is an awesome company and
a leader in online mental health.
Incredible. And when Healthline came over, they wanted to scale everything up. And a niche podcast with Gabe and his ex-wife is not the kind of thing that you can scale up to where we need to be. It's important for me to explain to people that the patient voice is going to live on over on the Psych Central Show podcast. Rachel Starr, who lives with schizophrenia, interviews experts and talks about schizophrenia. And I'm going to be working very hard to make sure that there's other content surrounding the patient voice. Unfortunately, the avenue for it at this juncture is no longer not crazy.
Yeah.
It's difficult to make a podcast week after week. That's number one. It takes a lot of time. And we really felt that time would be best spent launching other podcasts, getting other hosts. And, not for nothing, and I am a little embarrassed to admit this, Healthline is kind of looking at, okay, we've got 3 podcasts right now. We're trying to scale up, and all 3 of them involve Gabe as a host.
You think that's a component of it?
I do think that it's a component, and I think that it's a reasonable one. I mean, head over to any serious podcast network. Let's take NPR, for example. They don't have one guy hosting and co-hosting all of the shows. Healthline can go broader.
Yeah. All health all the time.
Yeah, they're not just mental health. So I just bring that up because while it's sad, Lisa, and unfortunately it kind of bit you in the ass a little bit, I get it.
Well, but that goes into our next point, which is where are we going from here? Gabe has accepted an amazing new job where he'll continue to do some hosting, but also a lot of behind the scenes stuff.
It's extraordinarily exciting to think that when I started podcasting 5 years ago, everybody laughed at me. They're like, you're never, ever going to go anywhere with this. Podcasting is this niche thing that nobody gives a shit about except a bunch of millennials. And 5 years later, I've got this great team at this amazing company that is really good at digital content. It's just amazing to think of this large company is going to be putting their oomph behind it. This is a company that excels at digital content marketing. This is a company that excels at things like video and social media and, blogging and websites and millions upon millions of impressions a month. And mental health is going to get the red carpet treatment. It's going to be out there in a way that it's never had before. Psych Central was an amazing company and huge in the space. And I assure you that they're a drop in the bucket compared to what we're looking at now. As big as Psych Central, the company was, and that just makes me so excited. So excited for all the people that we can reach. Now, psychcentral.com is still a website. It's still out there for all your mental health needs.
Mental health, mental illness, and psychology.
Yeah. I'm excited.
Yeah,
I'm really
it's
excited. But parting is such sweet sorrow. I'm not going to be working with Lisa in the same capacity. She's no longer going to be a co-host anymore.
Yeah, but I'll still be here.
You will still be here. You'll still be a content editor.
This is not going to change the amount of hours we have contact with each other per week.
Oh, well, that's not good. I think it's important to let our fan base know that we worked really hard to keep the show going. While it's understandable and why we are all on the same page that this is the right thing to do, it's bittersweet, right?
Absolutely. We did fight for it, and we want to say thank you again to all of our listeners. We've been amazingly impressed with the amount of listener engagement we've gotten, and emails and comments and suggestions. It's amazing. Not crazy. So much. I know I don't want to say the word engagement because engagement sounds dumb, but so much love and support and outpouring from the fans. It's amazing. So much more than the other podcasts.
It's the kind of thing that you can connect with, right?
Yeah, it has connected in a different way to listeners than the other podcasts have.
You're all our friends, and we appreciate all that you've done for us.
Yes. So I want people to know that we really do have these amazing fans who have been really there with us this whole time.
Lisa, what's your favorite memory?
My favorite memory?
Yeah, not about hosting the podcast, just in general. No, like what's your favorite memory of co-hosting Not Crazy?
Well, when I was a child, my dad got me a giant teddy bear.
You fell off that teddy bear and cracked your skull, didn't you? That's the way all your stories go. They always start off like really great. You're like, oh, my dad got me a giant teddy bear and I loved it and it was so good. We had to get rid of it when it got bed bugs and almost killed my brother. It's like, how do your stories always shoot to the left on us? It's like, can't you have one story that doesn't end with somebody drunk under a Christmas tree?
That was the story of our first puppy. She didn't get to stay with us.
Your puppy was drunk under the Christmas tree?
No, the puppy hated my brother.
I mean, I'm not too fond of him.
You always got along fine.
I'm just kidding. If Jonathan is listening, which you and I both know he isn't,
Occasionally my mom makes him.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, I want him to know that I've enjoyed all of his weddings and I'm looking forward to the next one. They're high-class affairs.
I'm feeling a little bit bad because my mom really likes this podcast. So I'm like, I don't know what she's going to do on Tuesdays anymore. She's retired, so, she doesn't have anything else.
There are other podcasts.
Okay. Well, what are some other podcasts that I could turn to for my podcasting needs?
I am going to miss Not Crazy, and I know that your mom is looking for other mental health content. And while Not Crazy was unequivocally my favorite mental health show, there are other ones. For example, there's the big guy, Paul Gilmartin. He used to host Dinner and a Movie on, I don't know, like TBS or TNT, back before DVRs. He's a funny guy. He's a great comedian. He's a great mental health advocate, and he's the host of Mental Illness Happy Hour. You can find it at mentalpod.com, or of course just Mental Illness Happy Hour on your favorite podcast player. I would be shocked if our listeners already haven't heard of this guy. He's fantastic.
Well, I was going to say they're probably already listening.
Yeah, they listen to him first, and then they listen to our show.
To be fair, probably, yes. He's the big player.
But Lisa, we want to give a shout out to some of our friends who are podcasting. I mean, we had Rachel on the show.
Well, Paul Martin is a friend. He's been on the show. Good catch, Lisa. We want to give a shout out to the smaller fish in the larger pond. Rachel Steinman, she's awesome. Now she was on the show, so everybody should already know and subscribe to her show, Dear Family. Highly recommend. Very cool show. Very cool woman. It's Dear Family on your favorite podcast player. Just look it up. I should also check out her episode if somehow you're a super fan and you've missed it. All of our fans are super fans.
All of our fans are super fans, but you're really a super fan if you listen to every single episode.
You mean like all the fans?
Lisa, I haven't listened to every single episode.
I have, multiple times. Who else will our listeners be turning to for their podcasting needs?
Camera! We should give a huge shout out to our friend Camera. We love her.
Camera, of course, is the person behind all of our Facebook Lives, and every time we're on The Mighty, she is always the person behind the screen, controlling what you see, and she has a podcast.
It's called Mentality, which we should spell so that people can look it up.
Mentality. Isn't that super clever, by the way?
Because they drink tea.
Yeah, Mentality, but the T is capitalized. Mentality, right? And every episode also tells you what tea they're drinking.
Boom.
I know, right? And you can find that over at anchor.fm/Mentality Talk. That's MENTALITEATALK. Mentality Talk.
We'll be back in a minute after we hear from our sponsors.
Interested in learning about psychology and mental health from experts in the field? Give a listen to the Psych Central Podcast, hosted by Gabe Howard. Visit psychcentral.com/show or subscribe to the Psych Central Podcast on your favorite podcast player.
This episode is sponsored by BetterHelp.com. Secure, convenient, and affordable online counseling. All counselors are licensed, accredited professionals. Anything you share is confidential. Schedule secure video or phone sessions, plus chat and text with your therapist whenever you feel it's needed. A month of online therapy often costs less than a single traditional face-to-face session. Go to BetterHelp.com/Psych Central and experience 7 days of free therapy to see if online counseling is right for you. BetterHelp.com/Psych Central.
And we're back on Not Crazy, saying goodbye.
Yours is sad.
I know.
Mine's upbeat.
All right, well, tell me what to say then.
And we're back with the final Not Crazy extravaganza with Gabe and Lisa. You know, Lisa, one of the ways that we were able to build our audience is that people gave us a chance.
Yeah.
Of course, is our association with Psych Central, and I will be forever grateful to them for putting us on the air and giving us a chance. But
thank you, Dr. John.
Yeah, Dr. Grohol is badass, but there's a lot of really great podcasters out there that aren't currently associated with any particular podcast network. And, search for them. I always say that sometimes the best blogs are on page 2 of a Google search. Sometimes the best podcasts are outside of the top 100. Nobody's given them a chance because, they have to click next before they see them. Sincerely, make it a point to go into iTunes or Google Play or Stitcher or Spotify or Pandora. And I really recommend, clicking on page 3 and seeing what's out there. You're really going to find some diamonds in the rough, but you're also going to find some really shitty podcasts. But seriously, I'm thinking about the beginning of my career when my blog was on page 800 of Google. That's before it won all the awards, before it got associated with anything, before I met Dr. John.
That's not the greatest example, though, because your later work is so much better. So if you had been like an unknown diamond in the rough whose work back then was just as good as your work now, that would be like a better analogy. But no, some of your early stuff was not great.
It wasn't great, but people still connected with it.
That's true. That's fair.
They still emailed me and they encouraged me to get better. Go back to my first podcast and they're not that great either.
Because I wasn't here yet.
I don't think that anybody's first anything is good. Stephen King, one of the most prolific writers in probably history. I'm sure that if you read his first short story that he published in Playboy, it's probably not that fantastic.
Is that where he put his first short story?
I'm pretty sure, yeah.
'Cause I'm thinking his first novel was Carrie, and it was frankly one of his best works. Better than a lot of his later stuff.
Well, first off, Carrie was not his first book. It was his first book under the name Stephen King.
Really? I didn't know that.
Everybody knows that.
I didn't know that.
Richard Bachman. Everybody
No, the
knows
Bachman books came later. No.
He's had lots of pen names.
I'm going to have to Google that. This means there might be Stephen King material out there I haven't read. Why have you not shared this information with me previously?
Most prolific writer ever.
No, he's not. Isaac Asimov is much more prolific than Stephen King.
Stephen King has way more words. Asimov's stuff was so short.
One, it's Asimov, and no. He wrote the Foundation
Tiny.
novels.
Tiny.
No. I don't think you know a lot about modern literary.
Tiny. Stephen King, his grocery list is 400 pages.
And he will publish it soon. Anyway, I feel like that's a little off topic. Going back to the podcast, Gabe.
You know, Lisa, I'm Googling that because just one time on one of these episodes, I want to actually settle a bet and figure out who is the most prolific writer of all time.
I don't know, the most prolific writer of all time. That could be anybody. Who wrote Gilgamesh? That could be that guy. Maybe it's Homer. I mean, he had the Odyssey. That's pretty long.
It's not. It's some guy I've never heard of.
All right, who is it?
The 10 most prolific authors of all time.
Okay.
You know, Lisa, it's funny. In the top 10 list, Stephen King is number 10.
Okay.
He's written 60 full-length works and over 200 short stories. But it is true that Isaac Asimov is more prolific than Stephen King.
Told ya.
However, Isaac Asimov comes in at number 9.
Huh.
With 500 books and short stories. And in fact, they're not even sure how many short stories for Isaac Asimov. However, the most prolific writer in the world is a gentleman by the name of Ryoki Anu. He's written over 1,075 books published under multiple pseudonyms.
Huh. Okay. I have never heard of this person. Does that mean he's good? Well, I have to go look it up.
One of his most famous books, Sekiro Fast Food, and I'm positive that I am butchering that first word, he wrote in one night.
Huh. All right.
Which means, frankly, I'm going to go on record as saying the most prolific writer of all time is manic. If you write one book in an entire night, mania has to be involved.
Gabe, so stigmatizing. Really? Really? Aren't you all just playing into all the stereotypes? Artistic genius comes with mental illness, blah, blah, blah. We don't know anything about this guy.
We know that he wrote a book in one night. Doesn't that scream mania?
Hey, if you do it right the first time.
You know, it's interesting to me when people say things like this, which is one of the reasons that I brought it up. One, you are right. Longtime listeners of the show are fans. They know that I don't buy into this trope. But one of the things that's interesting is they're like, well, he wrote that book in one night. Now, I'm a writer. I'm a podcaster. I've produced, etc. And we always joke, you know, Lisa and I record an episode in probably 2 hours.
Well, yeah.
Well, then where does the other 15 hours come in? So he wrote the book in one night.
Right.
How many months did he spend polishing the book, editing the book, finalizing the book, right? Just draft one. He didn't publish what he wrote on night one.
Well, since we know nothing about this person, it doesn't need to be months. It could be years. It could be decades. We don't know.
Well, I'm just going to say it's months. I mean, if he wrote draft one in a night, then it's probably reasonable that he could have polished it in a couple of months. Of course, it's also maybe he wrote draft one in a night and he gave it to finish editors to finish it up for him. Maybe he's got a writing partner. I don't know. Maybe he's got a Lisa.
I bet he has a Lisa.
Everybody needs a Lisa.
Don't they? Don't they?
Lisa, what's your least favorite memory of the show?
Did we ever get to my most favorite memory of the show?
No, we gave up because I asked you like 5 times, and as always, you deferred.
All right, least favorite memory of the show. What was that one show that we had the big fight over that I had to edit out?
All of them?
No. The one where I was like actually mad at you.
All of them?
No. There was one where I was like really for sure mad because you obviously were completely wrong because you're a giant jerk face.
All of them?
Well, okay, let's switch this around. What is your favorite memory of the show, Gabe?
probably the grandfather episode. I mean, you really opened up in a way that you never had before. And it's not surprising that it's near the end, because podcasting is really hard. Being vulnerable is really hard. And it took you a long time to take a leap of faith. And it's a shame, because I wonder where it could go. But it was fun to listen to you be critical of your childhood and be critical of things that happened to you. Because, when we're critical of our childhood and when we're critical of our experiences, we're critical of people that we love. And that seems disloyal. It seems disingenuous. It seems, it just seems hurtful. But talking about everything in a silver lining doesn't really help anybody, because they think, oh, well, the reason that Lisa beat major depression is because her parents are perfect. And my parents aren't perfect, so I'll never get better. And when you finally admitted that, my mom was a psychiatric nurse and she missed it. Well, that gives a lot of hope to people, because they're like, oh, well, maybe other people are missing my illnesses too. Do you know how many people don't seek help because they think, well, if I was really sick, my doctor mother would have figured it out, or my registered nurse uncle would have figured it out, or whomever. And that's just not reality. The reality is those closest to us make mistakes all the time. It was a bold thing for you to do. And I'm proud of you for that.
Oh, thank you, Gabe. That is nice of you to say. I am a little sad because I felt like I was getting better at this. It's taken me I don't feel like it's an unreasonable amount of time. This is just way hard. You've been doing this for years, so it's been difficult to play at your level.
But you did play at my level.
Well, luckily I have editing. Yay me. So I am kind of sad because I felt like I had more to do. I had more places to go. So do you think we'll ever be back?
Obviously, Not Crazy is never going to be back. It's time for the podcast to go away. However, Gabe and Lisa aren't going anywhere. As soon as the world opens up and COVID goes away, Gabe and Lisa are going to be at conferences. We're going to hit a stage together. We're going to do all of the same work that we always did. And now that you're actually willing to speak into a microphone publicly, there's a lot of really cool things to do. I have to say that I still think that that's a question that's better directed at you. You've always had the opportunity to share the stage with me and to be front and center and to share your story. You've always said no. That's confusing to a guy like me who just sees a microphone and wondered why I'm not talking into it. But I think really that's a question for you. Do you think we'll ever do something like this again? Because I really do think that ultimately it's your choice. The opportunities are out there.
I don't know. I had not looked at it that way, so I guess we'll see what happens.
That is very optimistic.
Well, that's what people tell me, that I have a really sunny disposition and I'm always looking on the bright side. So that really goes completely in line with what we know me to be.
Wow, I thought you got better at detecting sarcasm. You were like my little Sheldon, a genius who couldn't figure out the world, but through the power of Gaby Farrah Fowler, learned what sarcasm was.
He never did get the hang of it. I feel like I've got sarcasm totally down. So, Gabe, do you have any regrets? Is there anything else you left undone?
I live with regrets. I mean, I do regret that it has to end this way. It does seem unfinished.
Yeah. I'm having a lot more emotion towards it than I thought I would. And I think that is it, because I feel unfinished. I feel like I didn't come to the conclusion I wanted.
I think that honestly, the thing that I regret the most is not like finding a way to mute your microphone remotely. I really think that technology probably exists and that I never explored it more.
I have so many regrets. Anywho. And now he's going to give me crap for saying anywho, and I'm not supposed to say absolutely. And it's just, there are too many rules.
Yeah, it's hard being a podcaster.
I can't be constrained in this way, Gabe. I'm too much of a free spirit.
Do you feel that podcasting is constraining you? Because that's what every podcaster says. The constraints are horrible.
Yeah, it's totally holding me back from my true potential.
Lisa, I really think, honestly, at the end of the day, it comes down to something that Rachel Starr Withers said to me. And many years ago, when I first met her for the very first time, Rachel is a very popular YouTuber. She's got a really awesome YouTube channel, tons of schizophrenia content, tons of mental health content. And, then occasionally she sets herself on fire because she's a stunt woman. And I said to her, and again, we had just met. I mean, this was probably like the fourth sentence that she ever said to me. But I said to Rachel, I said, I'd like a YouTube channel. And she said, they're not hard to get. They're free. And that's kind of where you and I working together are, Lisa. Free is kind of an understatement, just like YouTube channels aren't exactly free. Content is expensive to produce, but, we can work together whenever we want. and we can talk whenever we want, and we can publish stuff whenever we want. We have the skills and the ability. And I think maybe I want to amend what I said earlier. Will we be back? Yes. Will Not Crazy be back? No, but Not Crazy was always just the name of our show. The show was always Gabe and Lisa.
Well, but we aren't going away. We're still going to be here, still working with Psych Central and Healthline, still podcasting.
Lisa, obviously we could go on forever about all the reasons that we're going to miss the show and how much that we enjoyed working with each other. And I think that really is the takeaway for me. But more importantly, I guess I just want to make sure that you know how much I enjoyed doing the show with you. It was fun, and we did good work, and we made good podcasts. And I'm glad that we're still working together. And I just want you to know how much I appreciated you during this entire process. It was just an incredible amount of fun.
Thank you, Gabe.
And a big thank you to all of our listeners. Sincerely, we could not have done any of this without you. And we are absolutely going to miss doing the show, and we're going to miss all of you. Please remember, we're not going anywhere. You can hit us up at show@psychcentral.com, and we will still answer. We promise. The past episodes will always remain online for, well, as long as we're willing to pay the bill, I guess. I mean,
all of eternity. Nothing on the internet ever dies.
And for the last time, my name is Gabe Howard, and I am the author of Mental Illness is an Asshole and Other Observations. You can, of course, get it on Amazon.com, but if you go over to GabeHoward.com, we will send you now collectible Not Crazy Podcast swag. I'll sign it, and it's cheaper.
Here is where I usually say, see you next Tuesday. But this time I'm going to have to reference the quote from the beginning. Parting is such sweet sorrow that I shall say goodnight till it be morrow. Thank you so much, everyone. You've been listening to the Not Crazy Podcast from Psych Central. For free mental health resources and online support groups, visit psychcentral.com. Not Crazy's official website is psychcentral.com/notcrazy. To work with Gabe, go to GabeHoward.com. Want to see Gabe and me in person? Not Crazy travels well. Have us record an episode live at your next event. Email show@psychcentral.com for details.
Do you have any last words?
I don't know. What do you got?
Nothing.